There is so much bullshit. So much bullshit. So much bullshit everywhere. We're drowning in it.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And, you know, we've got the sentencing coming up just in a couple of days, and I am currently working on a video to expose some information, and I'm going to try my best to get that out before that sentencing hearing because I want people to be able to look at that in awe and go, you really expect us to believe all this BS y'all are trying to put on a show for us for? But I'm hoping to get that out probably tomorrow afternoon, maybe tomorrow evening. And I'm still in some intense pain, so it's hard for me to really work hard on these things, but it's got to be done. Somebody's got to do it. And it looks like that somebody is going to be me. In this episode, though, I want to talk about the tremendous line of crap that has been served up like a buffet with silver platters that we are all expected to just walk down the line and fill our plates with and sit down and eat. Nah, not me, buddies. Because when you start to look at everything that's happened over the course of time in this case, and I'll give you some specifics, all right? Because the prosecution, I've said this so many times, they have never, ever once come out and tried to portray a motive of any kind. They've never once went on the record with any type of motive. They've never once went on the record with any type of Ted Bundy crap. They've never once went on the record with any type of Elliot Rodger BS. It's all been the mainstream morons and followed up by their minions. And it continues to happen to this day. It's almost like they do little tests, right? Well, let's focus on the Ted Bundy stuff. You know, 2 years ago, that's all we heard. Well, and then that wasn't really settling with the minds of people who could critically think. Then they came with the incel stuff. Well, it must be the incel stuff. It's Elliot Rodgers. You know, he hated women. That was pounded in our brains. But guess what? That one didn't stick either. So they would just kind of morph back and forth between, well, there's no motive at all. We don't need a motive. You don't have to have a motive, to, well, he's Ted Bundy. Well, no, that's not, we don't really need a motive. Well, he's Elliot Rodger. And then since the plea, we have been taken right back down that same road once again. I mean, to the point to where the Ted Bundy stuff was strong with the Dateline leak, but then it just started to not really settle well for us, right? And then they realized that. So they jump off of that. What do? They start plugging the Elliot Rodger BS again. Then they release the series on Prime Video, and they try to link Brian Kohberger to Elliot Rodgers, and more to the point, they try to do it through Papa Rodgers. Now, this is supposed to be James Patterson. Give me a break. This is supposed to be some big groundbreaking book. And the Prime series came off of this book. Well, as I read that book and I realized that they had dedicated like 5 chapters in that book to some obscure, and maybe not obscure, maybe some big Facebook group where Papa Rodgers, the online personality that they think is Brian Kohberger, was communicating with them. They dedicated 5 chapters in this freaking book to this stupid Facebook group with these ladies that, you know, it went into some dramatization about how they couldn't get along and keep their Facebook group going. What does that have to do with the Idaho 4 case? And then their big reveal is, well, we've got a student that we all seen interviews with several years ago. He never mentioned anything about Papa Rodgers in those interviews when he was talking about Brian Kohberger. I know I've seen him many times. Now they've got an interview with him. I'm not going to show it. In the Prime series where he's going, yeah, well, we studied Ted Bundy and Elliot Rodgers. So now they've dove in hard on the Elliot Rodgers incel thing because the Ted Bundy stuff wasn't settling in. And that is their big reveal in this book is what? Brian Kohlberger could have been like Elliot Rodgers, a disciple of Elliot Rodgers, even though everything we've seen goes against the Elliot Rodgers incel theory, i.e. go back to J.B. Gunner's video 2 years ago where he quotes the famous words of Kohlberger pimping, right? When he's getting everybody's phone numbers at the pool party. Yeah, they try to spin that, but they can't. Then there's the fact that they went totally against the Dateline reveal of Kohlberger's office mate that was infatuated with him and wanted him to put in the security system and tried to sleep at his apartment and all that. They went totally against that in the Patterson book, and they made it seem like that person didn't even really know Brian Kohlberger. So investigative journalism, my backside. Let me just say that. But all the minions follow along and all the mainstream morons follow along. Well, the Patterson book, look, it's Papa Rogers. Kohlberger must have been Papa Rogers, and they're basing all of their evidence off of that. Well, I'm here to tell you that other minions have already disproven the Papa Rogers thing years ago. And we're going to go ahead and watch a little bit of video just to back that up and show just how ignorant all of these mainstream morons, their minions, and these so-called investigative journalists are. They don't even dig deep enough into their own BS to realize it isn't true. Let's take a look.
Jonathan Lee Riches investigates. I am covering the Moscow, Idaho Brian Kohlberger case. I am out front of the Carmel Clay Schools, the Carmel Clay School District in Indiana, and that is buildings here. I'm out front of this place. Why am I here? Papa Roger. Papa Roger is Papa Roger Brian Kohlberger. Something very interesting about Papa Roger. Papa Roger was an individual who operated a Facebook group centered around the Moscow, Idaho tragedy, was saying stuff that was really suspect when it came to the Moscow, Idaho murders, was posting stuff that people claim only the killer would know. And people speculated Papa Roger, which was an alias, could have been Brian Kohlberger. But there's one thing about Papa Roger that some others found interesting, and that is the Carmel Clay Schools. Papa Roger made posts about their operating budget. Check this out. So the Carmel Clay School District in Indiana made this Facebook post. Don't wait until a referendum is on the ballot to learn more about school tax rates, how important they are for our budget, and how ours compares to other districts in the county, and it links a link. Papa Roger responded to this post. Papa Roger responded to that post. When are you going to let the community know about the impending operating budget shortfall? The operating referendum will need to be increased pretty significantly. He commented, this is the same Papa Roger that had the Brian Kohlberger Facebook group. Why is Papa Roger so curious to know about the Carmel Clay School District? What's going on here, people? So do you think Papa Roger was Brian Kohlberger? Why would Papa Roger be so interested in the Carmel Clay Schools? Papa Roger. Is Papa Roger Brian Kohlberger? Why was Papa Roger so interested in the Carmel Clay Schools? I'm out here investigating, trying to figure that out. I'm looking around Carmel, Indiana. It's just north of Indianapolis. Now, people have said, well, Brian Kohlberger was pulled over in Indiana. He was traveling through, not too far from this location. Is that a connection? Was Papa Roger a female? Somebody that was affiliated with the school here? A student? Someone that some people said possibly conspired with Brian Kohlberger, knowing so much information. A lot of unknowns, but, you know, people are curious about this Papa Roger individual. That's why I am here, JLR, boots on the ground at the scene. I'm going to be looking around Carmel, Indiana a little bit, making some phone calls, trying to figure out if anyone knows anything about who this Papa Roger was from this community.
So, well over 2 years ago, JLR tracks down Papa Rogers, not to Moscow, Idaho, up here, or Pullman, Washington, not to Pennsylvania over here where he lives, but they track down Papa Rogers to Carmel Clay, Indiana. And do you think Kohberger would really care about the budget of the schools in Carmel Clay, Indiana? Give me a break. This is investigative journalism. Let's read the book forward. So we've got the Idaho 4, an American tragedy, James Patterson, Vicky Ward, based on hundreds of exclusive interviews, the definitive account of the murders of 4 unforgettable college students by a cold-blooded killer. Based on hundreds of exclusive interviews. Well, quite a few of those hundreds of exclusive interviews was with a Facebook group and their opinions on the case. And when I read Good Morning America, New Revelations, James Patterson and Vicky Ward reveal. Oh, they're talking about revealing. New details. Really? Y'all revealed new details? An attempt to lift the veil of secrecy that has shrouded the Idaho College murder case for more than 2 years. Actually, no, you look to throw a veil of BS all over the case. It looks like more to me. This is much more than a true crime book. It is. It's much more. It's a bunch of farcical nonsense that's already been debunked well over 2 years ago. It's a vivid exploration of the range of human response when faceless terror strikes. I guess the range of human response is to go out and make up a bunch of BS. It's a portrait of America in this polarized moment. Yeah, it's a portrait of the duped American citizens in this polarized moment, and not a portrait of the ones that have their eyes open and their ears where they can hear. A lot of brand new reporting. Nope. It's a lot of old recycled BS. And it doesn't clean up a number of mysteries by Morning Joe. Look at these Morning Joe, Town and Country, and Good Morning America. Can we get any more brainwashed mainstream morons than them? Give me a break. So now you use your common sense. When we realize that JLR debunked the fact that Papa Rogers could have possibly been Bryan Kohberger almost 3 years ago, and yet this hard-hitting lift the veil book by these professional writers in this true crime genre, Vicky Ward and James Patterson, where do they get this unknown knowledge that not only was Kohberger acting as an incel like Elliot Rogers, but also that he was the online personality Papa Rogers? Because, it takes some real investigating to figure that out, or it would take just a few minutes of looking to debunk it, but yet they went with it. So where was their source of this astounding revelation information? Where did it come from? Turns out it came from some knuckleheads online with a Facebook group, and those old faces that we've seen since the very beginning of this case.
Post in particular that really catches my attention is his very first post on November 30th.
No, actually, his first post was several months before that when he was mad at a school district's budgeting. Give me a break. But no need to worry. Not only did the non-researchers, Vicky Ward and James Patterson, not vet the information they got from the Facebook sleuths, not knowing that the Facebook sleuths did not vet their own information. Now that we know all that is a yarn that was spun, don't worry, they're not going to stop with that. They got to back up their first assumption from the Facebook group that Papa Rogers was Bryan Kohberger. And don't worry, they're going to back it up with an interview with somebody that knew Bryan Kohberger. Turns out it's the same old person that knew Bryan Kohberger almost 3 years ago that we got to hear from. Yet, for some reason, when we first heard from him, we didn't hear anything about Papa Roger. But he's got a lot to say now. At first, he was just in a biology class. Now he was full-fledged in, the criminal justice class with Kohberger, studying Papa Roger and Ted Bundy and all of them. Let's hear from him.
Basically jaded and hated his life because he lacked the attention from friends, family, and most of all, women.
So I think that should put to bed, was Kohberger Papa Rogers? Obviously not. But it should also put to bed the whole incel nonsense that they've tried to spring on us once again with this hard-hitting journalism. Yeah, right, hard-hitting journalism. You can debunk everything they say in about 10 minutes worth of search. But I'm not saying that every bit of what they put together in that book through those interviews and that docuseries went to waste. Because as I've told you, I like to keep my eyes and my ears open for things that they can't manipulate. And I believe in my heart of hearts that you would have to have watched that Amazon Prime 4-part docuseries very closely and read the entire Patterson book for you to be able to put these two things together that I'm about to put together for you. And sometimes people that doesn't really want to say the things that they say shouldn't do interviews and let us know. Because for those of us that are in the know, when you look close enough and you hear people say certain things and then they divulge more information, it lets us in on exactly what the defense was going to do if this thing had gone to trial. And it would have been a blockbuster bombshell, I'm sure, because they did an interview with one young lady who gave a little bit of information, but not only that, they showed exactly where she lived. So what came next that I found in that Patterson's book gave us some insight on where the defense was really going to focus some of their attention at trial. And a lot of it had to do with probably what this young lady had seen or heard. And where she was located, correlated to what she could have seen or heard, tells us everything we need to know. And she was even more important to the defense's case, as she went on to state in the Patterson book, as Bethany. Now, the docuseries was kind enough to expose exactly where she was living right here in these apartments over on Linda Lane. And it's that perspective of those apartments, along with what she could have possibly witnessed, such as the dumpster guy walking up, maybe even gun rack guy getting out of his vehicle heading towards the King Road residence. Those would both be of, I would think, really big interest to the defense in this case.
It's my skin crawl knowing that he was on the same street. He was by my car. He was by my front door that morning.
Now, just because we hear her say that she was freaked out because the perpetrator was pretty much at her front door, doesn't mean that that's the only part that we need to pay close attention to. Because when you pay close attention, you can pick out what's real and what's added just to try to make the situation not look quite as nefarious. You see, she went on to say in the book that prior to the atrocity, somebody had come onto her porch of her apartment and tried to wiggle her door open. And that was the reason why she was explaining that the defense was very interested in her testifying at trial. However, when you listen to everything she says, you look at the place that she was at during the time of the night, right there stationed on Linda Lane, where she could have seen the things we just talked about. And then you think about how unnecessary somebody trying a door and nothing else about it. I mean, that wouldn't even apply. The defense wouldn't, they may want to call her into trial just to be able to say that, but they wouldn't go through the trouble that she went on to explain that they went through to get her to trial. You see, she said that she moved to California and she received before the grand jury testimony. Remember when everybody said that Bethany had the exculpatory evidence and she wasn't wanting to come back to Moscow to testify for that grand jury, and the defense wanted her to? Well, it turns out that they allowed Bethany to testify via Zoom. And this young lady here, though, went on to say They even let Bethany testify via Zoom, yet I'm in California and they were going to force me to come all the way back to Moscow to testify. And this is the defense that sent her the affidavit for her testimony, sent her the subpoena. So she was more important to the defense's case than even Bethany was. So when you put all those things together, exactly where she was at, what she would have seen, and the fact that the defense really wanted her to testify, well, then there's more than meets the eye to what that young lady actually seen that night. I believe it in my heart of hearts. But you know what? She's not going to say much more, and she pretty much lets you know why.
Legal reasons. And that's what the public, I don't think, necessarily understands.
Oh yeah, we're going to keep our eyes on that one going forward. But, here's the thing with this investigative journalism. I never in my life aspired to go out and do an investigative journalism. But then when I look at the access that people like Vicky Ward and James Patterson had to all of these people in this case, the interviews that they conducted, they said with over 300 individuals. And then you look at the information that they put out after completing all of those interviews and looking at the facts in this case, and you see absolute just big pile of BS that they came out with. I mean, who would have these interviews with these people and then put out the Facebook crap on Papa Rogers that has already been completely debunked, and then go through and try to paint Kohberger as an incel, which has already been completely debunked? And I can't believe these minions jump on it knowing it's debunked, but they have no scruples. But when they're actually interviewing people that may have some real insight into the case, they don't recognize it, and they just gloss over it, pop it up on the screen like, oh, look, we got another interview. Freaking deal weeds. You got somebody there, if you press her, that probably had actually seen something real that evening, but you'll never dig in deep to what's important. So I guess that leaves old Pav to do that, because when I hear things that are important, I am going to make note of them and I will bring it to the light, because in this case, the darkness has been too dark and there has been no light. Before it's over, we're going to bring light to this darkness. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, your thoughts, your criticisms. And until next time, Pavarotti's out.
Fly away. It's the first time of today.